This is Your Life is in Your Hands with Kenneth Lagerstrom. We encourage your participation in our program, so please call in to 1-866-472-5795. Again, that's 1-866-472-5795. If you have a question or comment about the program, you may also send your email to Voice America at humanhand.com. Now, back to Ken Lagerstrom.
Welcome back to Your Life is in Your Hands and an introduction to palmistry and hand analysis. And today with me is author and longtime chorologist Jennifer Hirsch from Africa. So how are you doing? Still with me there, Jen?
Yes, I'm here, Kenneth. Thank you.
Yeah. So, we were just discussing some of the different systems of hand analysis and how much it's become varied over the last years. And would you agree it really seems to be a trend towards a lot of the work on fingerprints now instead of just onto the lines?
Oh, most definitely. It's so fascinating because it was only really, I would say approximately in around about the 1930s, to my knowledge, that the first mention of fingerprints and the little patterns on the actual palmar surface as well started emerging in the books. And the old traditional Western palmistry has virtually no reference to fingerprints at all. So it's almost like a new layer is emerging for our investigation and decoding. And in fact, that's what I've called my book, Decoding Fingerprints. It's God-given glyphs, glyphs being a term for a fingerprint, a genetic glyph. So I've played on that. And yes, our fingerprints most definitely are no longer just an irrefutable mark of our identity, as we know them to be, but they also describe our individual psychological profiles, each with their own signature traits. So we've got some very exciting information and research happening globally around what makes us tick based upon the distribution of our fingerprints.
I find there's a lot of health ones focusing on the fingerprints too now.
There's a massive body of health research in medical and scientific journals and online related to all sorts of physiological conditions.
Right.
That is a growing body, most definitely.
Yeah, I know. I spent more than 10 years just researching what fingerprints can be used for identifying health defects. And it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. It seems we can't just learn enough of it or all of it, because every time you learn a bit, there's that much more you still don't know.
Yes. Well, I think it's irrefutably proven now as well that, for example, there's a link to Alzheimer's, there's links to various types of cancers, there's links to heart disease, there's any number of various physiological, certainly things like Down syndrome and so on. There's autism is another one.
And where fingerprint patterns.
Yep.
That's
it's the microcosm in the the macrocosm in the microcosm, like any other system. Like iridology, you can diagnose the body through the eyes, so you can diagnose the body through the hands.
Right. Yeah, I know over here in North America, they don't like us using the word diagnose.
Okay.
You can assess or see it, but only a doctor can diagnose. So that's one of the issues that sometimes crops up here from the hands.
And very validly so, I would say.
Oh, definitely,
because,
yes.
One doesn't want to start sort of telling people they've got some ghastly situation going on.
I just read this book on
that would be very unethical. Yes.
Yeah. So with yours on fingerprints, do you look more at individual prints or the prints in combination?
I'd look at both. Certainly, I'd do, take the palm print with ink, which is what most of us hand analysts do when somebody arrives for a session. We do a distribution of ink over the palmar surface. And from that image, we then look at the fingerprints as well as the lines and the shapes and so on. And then working with each individual finger in our system, each finger or each digit really, because we're going to include the thumb, relates to one of the 5 elements. So it's a perfect match, five digits, 5 elements. So depending on your distribution, if you've got a whorl or an arch or whatever it might be on that specific finger, then it's interpreted according to the symbols related to that finger to do with that particular element. But then we also look at them collectively. So my answer is both.
You've got to do both.
A very whole viewpoint of it.
Right. Yeah, I found personally, it seems the research on fingerprints and using them for diagnosing health defects, it seemed to be a little limited because a lot of it was looking at only individual fingerprints and counting the number of ridges.
Yes.
But they're trying to find it like from just the thumbprint or just the index fingerprint instead of the combination, and even the combination of loops, swirls, arches, the different print patterns.
Yes. Well, that's certainly an area of specialization. I think with the hands, I find there are very specific areas of specialization. So the skin ridge patterns are an area of specialization, the lines are an area of specialization, the fingers and so on and so forth. In my particular work, I avoid going too deeply into health assessment, to use your term, for the very reason you outline. It's tricky, it's under-researched, it's under-proven, and it's disturbing to try and go there with a client unless they present with a condition that's already manifest. I think my approach would be more to bring comfort to them in the other areas of their lives, or let's say guidance and insight, rather than talking too much about their health.
Right.
Unless that's what they present with specifically, and they've come asking for that.
And as they improve their spiritual and emotional state, their health would naturally improve.
Yes, I would certainly hope so. Yeah. So I like to look at the signature traits of each individual fingerprint, and then from that add to the sort of overall personality traits of a person, especially linked to relationship compatibility, relationship with themselves, very important, because I love this concept of self-inquiry. The more conscious we become about our own psyches, the more we're growing and the happier we're going to become. So that's where I'm at. And then, of course, the whole question of what work should we be doing individually.
Right.
What's going to make us happiest?
So they're really after the life coaching. So,
I mean, that's quite big in South Africa. I personally don't call myself a life coach, but yeah, that would, as I said, it would fit under that umbrella.
I've got an email question here from Annette. She writes, does it mean anything for me to have whorls on the palms of my hands, which is under my pinky and the soles of my feet?
Uh-huh.
So a whorl.
Okay, well, we don't really analyze under the feet.
And
that I have actually, funnily enough, mentioned that, but not with an actual interpretation. One would need a footologist for that. But this question of having the interdigital whorl under the pinky,
right?
That's a lovely marking to have on a hand. If I'm not mistaken, you've got some knowledge of what those interdigital whorls might mean, or would you like me to share my idea?
From the system I use, or systems, it would basically be a real focus on communications and spirituality. So a person who's a natural, like a spiritual teacher or a natural communicator, they would just have that.
Yeah. It's not a marking you see very often to find a whorl. When your writer said under the pinky, I would imagine it would be slightly between the pinky and the ring finger. And that was what we call an interdigital whorl in the humor loop, what we call the humor loop.
Yep.
And I would say it definitely adds a very lively mental astuteness. That would be my interpretation of that. It could indicate that there's a resonance with all forms of humor, and there's a strong sense of wit. It's an air marking, air and water together, so there's a bubbliness about it. And very individualistic person, very observant of beauty, very appreciative of art. Perhaps they have a flair for languages. There's also an element of detachment to their personality. A whorl always adds, in my system again, let's quantify that, an element of detachment. There's something of the observer.
Okay. Oh, yeah, the observer. Yeah, I find it's an area of focus. It's almost like your hands are putting that bullseye there, saying, look here. This is important to you. Anywhere that whorl appears.
It's a gift marker. As some of our systems, there's a system that they love this term gift marker, and I would imagine that would be a gift marker.
Right.
It's unusual, it's unique, it's individualistic, it's specialized, it's something to pay attention to and say, well, I am in some way special. I'm gifted in some rather unique way. What is that?
And I find those gifts can be challenging ones anytime there's that whirl.
Yeah, I mean, a whirl on the moon mount, lower down on the palm, I'm sure you've come across that from time to time.
Yeah, that one.
In fact, going back into the medical field, that's been associated with people with schizophrenia. There's been a predominance or a higher percentage of people.
Right.
In the research that schizophrenics have that marking.
Yeah, and of course that area of the hand is showing the deep imagination and the unconscious mind. So when a person focuses too much on the imagination,
they're going to close off the deepest parts of themselves, so to speak. Yeah. There'll be an element of emotional disconnectedness, with the moon mount representing the emotion and the whirl representing the air element, which is the detached, distant observer.
Right.
Put the two together and you've got a possible tendency perhaps to disconnect, which is preempting some form of mental illness possibly. So in the element system it kind of hangs together.
Yeah, and of course one marking, it's not going to, mean, oh, there's a mental illness here, we see it now.
Oh, certainly not. God,
it's always, of course, a combination of markings.
Yeah. But they'd certainly be had very vivid imaginations.
Yeah. Yeah, so, which hand do you read when you're reading, or do you do both?
I read both hands, always. Yeah, because we're working very holistically. Yeah. So, I mean, we've got the traditional idea of that the left hand is what you're born with. It's your, if you're right-handed, that is. Mm-hmm. So let's say your passive hand is what you're born with. It represents your potential, what you've come in with, and your right hand represents what you do with it. Now, that's the palmistic viewpoint.
Right. Yeah, the old standard.
But we take it a little more deep. We talk about that your active hand shows the aspects that you are perhaps more conscious of about yourself, and your passive hand might indicate what you're a little bit less conscious of within yourself, but both are very pertinent to you as a holistic being. And then you've got a lot of people who say that I'm ambidextrous.
Yeah.
And then the question is, and then the question is, which hand do you sign with? And we base our assessment of which is the active hand based upon which hand they sign with.
Okay. I usually do the comparison of the hands looking for the length difference.
Oh, yeah.
Typically the dominant hand is about 1/8 of an inch longer if you line up the fingers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But then you do get some real tricky ones where they get the index finger longer on the right hand, middle finger longer on the left hand. And so it's like the different aspects of themselves, dominant or left or right. So some of those ones get tricky when they're ambidextrous.
Yes. I heard another way of doing it, and that is to see how they clap. When you clap, something about whether you clap with your right hand more inclined to the top than the left, or vice versa.
Okay, well, we're going to have to take another break here, and then we'll be back with more of Your Life is in Your Hands.